How's it going, guys? Cody, guys, back again, dropping out another video. Right, guys, this is a story in the Independent. This is the prison watchdog, right, or HMIP, Her Majesty's even Inspector of Prisons. The chief inspector is a guy by the name of Peter Clark. Very official role he's got, very important role he plays, and if a prison's crap, he'll say it's crap. If it's a good prison, he'll say it's a good prison, and it needs to improve on recommendations and stuff. But just listen to this. So, headline reads, "Prison conditions most disturbing ever seen, with staff now accustomed to jails not fit for 21st century, watchdog says. Conditions in jails deteriorate to totally unacceptable levels, and assaults and self-harm hit record levels as prisons show repeated patterns of failure, says prison inspector. Prisons in England and Wales are enduring the most disturbing conditions ever seen as authorities fail to take action to curb soaring levels of violence and self-harm in jails. The Chief Inspector of Prisons has warned in a damning new report. Repeated patterns of failure have led to a point where staff are inured to conditions that have no place in an advanced nation in the 21st century, Peter Clark warned. Violence, drug use and self-harm all remain serious issues, with assaults and self-harm having reached record levels in the past year, the report states. This is despite Mr. Clark's call for ministers to address the issues as a matter of urgency in his annual report just a year ago. Politicians and campaigners warned the prison system has reached the point of emergency and said the Chief Inspector's warnings of rapid deteriorations in jails must not be allowed to fall on deaf ears. Speaking at the report's launch, Mr. Clark said, "I realise that in recent years many prisons, short of staff and investment, have struggled to maintain even basic standards of safety and decency. Some prisons in very difficult circumstances have made valiant efforts to improve. Others sadly have failed to tackle the basic problems of violence, drugs and disgraceful living conditions that have beset so many jails in recent years. I have seen so many instances where both staff and prisoners alike seem to become inured to conditions that should be not accepted in a 21st century Britain. There was an obvious correlation between the significant increase in violence across the prison estate over the past 5 years and the large reduction in staff numbers and resources that has taken effect," he said. The report found that levels of violence have continued to increase in prisons, with assaults hitting record highs last year and continuing to become less safe. Self-harm among inmates also did hit the highest levels on record, with the number of reported incidents rising from 40,161 in 2016 to 44,651 in 2017, an increase of 11%. And then this year, when they released the figures for last year, because it's always done a year in lieu, you're going to see, again, higher numbers than that, guys. Mr. Clark welcomed a gradual decline in self-inflicted deaths, which peaked in 2016, but said there were repeated patterns of failure in far too many cases. He said it was particularly concerned at the failure by staff to carry out basic operation procedures, such as responding promptly to cell call bells. That's a mouthful. I'm going to go back to that in a minute. Whether this is a cultural or leadership issue, it needs to be looked at carefully. He said there is a clear link between cell call bells and self-harm, and in the worst case, suicides. The report also described a total unacceptable situation in which many thousands of prisoners find themselves forced to share cells designed to hold only one prisoner. These were used as their bedroom, dining room and lavatory, despite inadequately screened dirty toilets without lids, it stated. How is that in a prison, which is one place where there is no shortage of labour to clean places, can become so unhygienic, Mr. Clark asked. The conditions are so terrible that staff seem to have lost the ability to recognise them as being good or being bad. It's just become the norm. Despite the government's ambition to improve training and education by getting inmates out of cells, many prisoners remain locked up in them for up to 22 hours a day. 1 in 5 prisoners told inspectors they were out of their cells for less than 2 hours a day, while just 16% were unlocked for more than 10 hours. The report also highlighted that the readily availability of drugs in too many prisons, with 13% of prisoners acquiring a drug habit while they were detained. Mr. Clark said this was shockingly high. Too many prisoners still lack a comprehensive strategy to reduce drug supply with modern technology to detect and deter drugs, which has been proven to be effective, being introduced too slowly, the report stated. Responding to the report, the Shadow Justice Secretary Richard Burgon said, "The crisis in our prison has now become an emergency, as Labour has long warned it would. The Tories' ideological decision to axe thousands of prison officers and slash the prison budget is to blame for the unprecedented failures. The government must now take responsibility for some of the worst prison conditions that inspectors have ever seen. Instead of tinkering around at the edges, the government needs to outline an emergency plan and new funds to make our prisons safe and humane." Now, on that last thing, Richard Burgon, guys, right, that's just political point scoring. Now, do me a favour, Richard, and fuck off, right, trying to use prisoners as political pawns in your little game of, like, dirty comments and, like, just, do you know what I mean? They haven't got a clue, right? If Labour were in power, guys, you're not going to see anything different, guys. These MPs are self-serving, up their own arse, middle-class tossers, right? They care about themselves, guys. You know what I mean? They know nothing of our world. Most of them, not all of them, most of them have been raised into middle-class families, privately educated. You know what I mean? And they're residing over people at the bottom of society, some of the most vulnerable and susceptible peoples in society, and they can't relate to them, so they don't give a shit about them, and they haven't got a clue. The current prisons minister, Rory Stewart, and the current Justice Secretary, David Gauke, are both. I'm still critical of them, and I'm still cynical of them, but they're definitely moving things in the right way, definitely much so. Like I say, guys, when it references reaction times, reference call bells, that's what I wanted to go on to. I didn't think he was going to touch base on that, and then I was going to fill in the blanks. But where he said there, he said, particularly concerned at the failure by staff to carry out basic operation procedures, such as responding promptly to cell call bells. Where there is a cultural or leadership issue, it needs to be looked at carefully. He said there is a clear link between cell call bells, self-harm, and in the worst case, suicides. Now, that is definitely true. Now, for those that have never been in prison and don't know, or might be in the States and have never been in prison, when you're in your cell, as you walk in your cell and then turn back on yourself and look, say the door's closed, to the right, you've got a little speaker thing and you've got a button. You press the button and then it rings like you'd hear a phone ring, 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 it just rings. And what it is, it's used in the case of an emergency. Now, some prisoners, unfortunately, think it's fucking room service, which prison isn't a hotel in the first place, but they think that they can just press it because, like I say, some prisoners get on the bell because they need bog roll. Other prisoners get on it because they're kicking off, or they want to air a grievance and they're fuming. Other prisoners get on the bell because they're in general need of medical attention. They've slashed up. They're at risk of suicide. They want to speak to a listener. They want to speak to. They want to get a phone call and get out of the cell and make a phone call to a loved one because they're going to do themselves in. And the amount of times, right, where I've been in prison and I've been a cleaner and I've heard prisoners on the bell, right. And then I've looked through the flap, yeah, because the screws are just sat there. The screws are sat in the office where the phone's ringing, because it rings through to them. They know which cell it is. They pick up the phone, and then they put it on loudspeaker, and then they can speak to the person in the cell. And I've genuinely seen them just sat there like, nah, fuck it, and just with their feet up and having a brew and all that. And the reality is you don't know if that person's asking for a toilet roll. You don't know if that person's standing there with severed an artery in their hand because they've slashed up. But failures to respond to the bell have cost prisoners their lives. It's the reality. And like I say, what flows from that is suicides, self-harm. And like I say, by them not responding to the bell in a timely fashion, for me, if I'm the governor of that prison, I literally want to see a bell go off and you've got literally 2 minutes, a minute and a half to get there. And if not, I want to know why not. Right, because like I say, these are prisoners, and before they're ever prisoners, guys, the people. Conditions within prisons, guys, is disgusting and stuff. And to be honest with you, you wouldn't house animals. Well, I'll put it to you like this, right? You've heard of cockroaches, yeah? Now, cockroaches are rife within prisons, mainly Victorian-style prisons, but they are in other prisons as well. Now, I seen when the HMIP, who Peter Clark's in charge of, went into Walton prison. There was a cockroach dead. Now, cockroaches, guys, are the most... If there was a nuclear blast, everything would be dead apart from a cockroach. That's how... But the cockroach couldn't survive the conditions in Walton jail. What's that saying about the jail, guys? And like I say, housing prisoners in dilapidated, decrepit, run-down prisons. I mean, look at Walton Prison. Ironically, on the sign outside, it says a 21st century community prison. The reality is, it's something reminiscent of Dickensian England. It's like something out of a Dickens novel. It really, really is. Abject squalor, mice, do you know what I mean? Vermin, cockroaches, and everything in between, guys. Housing prisoners in that way doesn't aid rehabilitation, nor does it act as a deterrent. It succeeds only in demoralising you, desensitizing you, dehumanising you, and making you even more disenfranchised than when you enter the system. That creates monsters, like I said, and then you've got fewer police on the streets. It's just not the way to go, man. For me, they need to build new prisons, right, but only on the proviso that they're going to close 2 or 3 smaller prisons, right? And what they'll do, they'll close them other prisons, put all the prisoners into this super prison, and then what they'll do, they'll sell the land off, and then that'll all go to the government and stuff. Because if you can think about Victorian prisons, the land that the prisons sit on, like Strangeways, is right next to the city centre. It's a stone throw away from the Manchester Evening News Arena and Trinity Way. And just think, if that was to be sold off, right, it could be a hotel. People might make it to an hotel, and people got a niche thing about, oh, it's a prison, it's a Cat A prison. They used to hang people in the end of B Wing, the riots. Another like a developer will just buy the land, bulldoze everything, and then build a load of apartments on it and stuff like that. They're making money, the government makes money. It's a win-win for all of those, you know what I mean? But prisons, we should be able to run prisons in the 2019 with prisons that are fit for purpose. These prisons, guys, for the most part, even Berwyn, it's had problems with the heating, right? It's a weird prison, and I've heard nothing but bad things about the prison. It was built in 2000 and what? Well, it was built in 2016, but it was opened in February of 2017. Nearly 2 years that prison's been open. And I said before the even prison opened, I said it's going to have the same problem as every other prison. And surprise, surprise, it had the same problem as every other prison, and more so. They're integrating sex offenders with general population prisoners. It's a Cat C prison, and it's also supposed to be a Cat D, but apparently they're currently running it as a Cat C prison, but it's actually built to a security standard of a Category B prison. I speak to a prisoner's girlfriend from that prison very regularly. She's cool as hell. I speak to a friend of mine from Manchester on Twitter who's got a mate in the jail as well. And the stories I've heard about the prison and the headlines speak for themselves. Super in only its size and its failings. Now, how can you build a new prison like that? They haven't even got a hospital wing, guys, a medical care wing to house people overnight. So apparently they can't house more than 1,611 inmates or 1,601 inmates. I can't remember. But yeah, just this isn't news to me, guys. We've seen prison for what it is. The facts are they're not fit for purpose, and they need most of these cells, guys, that are in order should be out. They shouldn't even be in order, and they shouldn't have prisoners in them. But like I say, it's just human warehousing. Stack them up, pile them high. Next wing, stack them up, pile them high. And like I say, guys, it's prisons are overcrowded, mental health, spice. Like I say, 13% of prisoners go to prison having never taken a drug in their life and leaving as addicts. Crazy, guys, crazy. Then a high percentage are leaving prison homeless. Reoffending rates cost the taxpayer £15 billion a year. Simply put, prison doesn't work. And by speaking out, guys, and keeping the stories in the headlines and stuff, and keeping the light on prisons, I personally feel like things are happening. Like I say, they're rolling out in-cell telephones. That's a step in the right direction. Then we want incoming calls for prisoners. So by keeping the pressure on anybody, not me, anybody that is highlighting the failures of the Ministry of Justice and the penal system as a whole, and calling for reform and overhauls and stuff like that, then I've got to respect them. I do my bit, I do my interviews and do my bit, you guys do your bit. Some people campaign for themselves because the partner's IPP. Some people campaign for all IPP. Some people campaign for joint enterprise. against joint enterprise, should I say. Some people fight for the partner, miscarriages of justice, wrongly convicted. Like I say, many things. Some people just fight for prisoners, all prisoners, because they want to reduce the prison population and they feel sorry for them, and they get, some people get paid, some people volunteer. I don't get paid a penny. Still doing what I'm doing though. Still here, still doing my bit. Everyone plays a part. If you've got a loved one in prison and there's a story from within that prison, every time you speak to your loved one, say, oh, has there been a death in custody? Has there been any riots, or is there a riot situation? If there is, tell them to ring you straight away. Tell me what wing it's on. I'll take it to the media and then we'll get it in the papers. And what it does again, it highlights, why is this happening? People see the violence or the riot or a suicide in prison, right? And prisoners' deaths they try to sweep them under the rug like they're nothing. They're honest to God, guys, right? When these stories come out in the media about deaths in custody, the prison don't ring up the thing. Oh, just to let you know, Joe Bloggs has died. They don't, guys. How it works is somebody or the prison, it might be a prison officer that just thinks, you know what, this is fucking ruthless, rings the fucking paper and says, death in custody, I'm a prison officer, I can't tell you my name because I'll be victimised, prisoner blah 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 died on this wing. I've even got deaths in custody out from within a prison, guys, namely Ian Galtras at HMP Liverpool, God bless him, may rest in peace. Yeah, guys, any prison news you can get me or prison footage, literally, you've seen my contact details. My contact details are on my description, on my channel, my email, my WhatsApp, my Insta, my Twitter, my phone number, email, whatever you want to do. Hit me up, guys. It's about networking. It's about bringing people together from different walks of life, different prisoners' girlfriends, prisoners, former prison officers. I don't care. Bring it together, highlight the failings, put a spotlight on the prisons with the hope that things are going to change for prisoners. Because if things change for prisoners, the knock-on effect of that will reduce reoffending, and it will reduce reoffending rates, and people will hopefully be able to break the cycle of crime. It will save lives as well, decreasing prison numbers and stuff, abolishing short sentences, freeing IPP prisoners. The list goes on and on and on. I'm going to leave it there, guys. Let me know what you think about the story. Like, comment, subscribe. Cody out.